Hello and welcome to The Hindu. I'm TCA Sharad Raghavan, the economics and business editor for The Hindu. And now, the news of the day, of course, is the tariffs that US President Donald Trump has announced on India, a 25% tariff plus a penalty. Now, of course, this comes at the end of a lot of negotiations between India and the US about a potential deal, and it also has a lot of implications for our future relationship between India and the US. And so, to discuss this with you, we have a fantastic panel. We have Mr. Ajay Srivastav. He is the founder of the Global Trade Research Initiative, GTRI, and he's also a former Director General of Foreign Trade for the Government of India. So he is a fantastic base of knowledge in terms of our trade relations with various countries. And we also have with us Suhasini Heather, who's the Hindu's diplomatic editor. And so she can give us a lot of insight about our relationship with the US and what this means between India and Russia and India and other countries. So thank you both so much for joining us. So now, Mr. Srivastav, I wanted to start with you because there are a few conceptual questions that I wanted to get clarity on before we can move on to some of the other topics. The first is, who exactly do these tariffs, this 25% that has been levied, who does it impact? Because there's some misconceptions that things are going to get more expensive in India because of these tariffs, but that's not right, right?
That's not right. I totally agree with you. In India, uh, all these tariffs are about their import tariffs. So only when US imports something, then the things will be expensive for US consumers. For India, it will be too far stretched to say that things will be expensive in India. I say if somebody is making things in India and we are not able to sell in US, there will be more of the things, less people to buy. So prices may go down, but that situation also will not come.
Right, I understand. And the other thing is that he's mentioned this 25% tariff, but he's also constantly been talking about a 10% baseline tariff. So, and there's some confusion now. So, will the tariff on India be 10% plus 25%, or will it just be 25%?
It's 10% plus 15%.
Oh, 10 plus 15. So, a total of 25%.
Yes.
I see. Okay. And so now, Suhasini, I wanted to come to you. Recently, especially post the announcement of the 25% tariffs, right after that, he announced that a deal on oil with Pakistan, and he included a slightly snide comment there that maybe Pakistan can start selling oil to India. And right after that, he also then posted saying that India's economy is a dead one. Uh, but now this comes after quite a lot of optimistic talk on both sides about a trade deal, and there was a lot of bonhomie going on about a potential trade deal. So what changed in just a few days or maybe a week?
Sharad, the fact is that the last few months have moved by so quickly, it seems hard to remember that just in February, the two leaders had met and announced plans for FTA talks even before Trump had announced his tariff plan for the world.
Right.
So India was to have been the first mover on this. It had the first mover's advantage. And then after that, we saw the negotiations begin. I think they're in their 15th or 16th round, back and forth for the last few months.
Mhm.
Even as late as I think mid July, we had heard from Mr. Trump saying, we're working on the deal and I think we'll do it. I think it'll be a deal like the one Indonesia had, for example. So, what we're seeing in the last 24 hours, which is five different statements from Mr. Trump, whether it's saying that India is a dead economy, whether it's saying that, the Indians have not treated us so well, while India is our friend, the fact is that we've done relatively little business with them, which is not actually accurate given we do bilateral trade of about $200 billion. Then one simple one that said we have a massive trade deficit with India, which we know is a big bugbear for him, even though we understand that the trade deficit is not the decider of the value of the trade relationship. And then finally, the one, as you said, about talking about the fact that we are dealing with South Korea, and they have, and at least Mr. Trump has announced that a deal with South Korea was done late last night, India time.
Right.
We have an energy deal with Pakistan. We're not quite sure what the contours of that is. There was one sort of side reference to India there, and then this very major one, not just talking about India on its own being a problem when it comes to trade access and trade deficit. Secondly, that India is continuing to do these deals with Russia, energy deals with Russia, which frankly didn't have an objection to earlier. And thirdly, that India is a part of BRICS, which he thinks is creating a currency to counter the dollar, which again is not based in fact, it's been refuted by leaders of all. So I think what we've seen is the symptoms that the India-US FTA negotiations are not going well. And Mr. Srivastav can probably tell you, because I think right at the beginning of the trade negotiations in February, he was already listing where the problem areas were. And we seem to be at that point where, judging by the Commerce Ministry's response as well, where they talk specifically about farmers, entrepreneurs, and MSMEs as the constituencies that they will always protect, suggesting to us that talks have broken down over agricultural access, things like soya, things like corn that Mr. Latnik was so keen on areas like GM foods, and on the dairy sector. These have always been sensitive issues. I think what we started with right at the beginning, thinking these would probably be a problem, they have not been resolved. Now, in all of this, and I'll just leave it there, this is not the only problem India is having with Mr. Trump, right? So over the last few months, we've had an issue with the way he has chosen to portray the end of Operation Sindoor, about his ties with Pakistan in particular, the lunch for the Pakistani chief, the way the US deported Indians, the way students are not getting visas to go or are being deported for very, very minor infractions. So there's a kind of almost a list of areas where India did feel upset about what Mr. Trump was doing and what his policies meant. But because the FTA negotiations were going on, there was a kind of sense that India should just keep it all under the radar for the moment, let the FTA negotiations go through. Once those happen, then Mr. Trump will be more amenable on some of the other issues. If the FTA negotiation is now, what we see is there's still some hours to go for August the 1st, and obviously the FTA deal could still happen. And here I'm referring to the early harvest deal, could still happen in the next few days or weeks. But if it doesn't go through, then a lot of other calculations, diplomatic ones, will also fall.
Great. So, Mr. Srivastav, then that very neatly leads into you explaining to us the difference between this early harvest deal, or the mini deal as they were calling it, and the larger, more comprehensive deal that the two leaders had announced in February. And which of the two is causing problems? Is it that mini deal is not happening but the larger deal might happen, or is the larger deal also at risk? If you could just run us through all of those facets.
But nobody knows the detail, and no side, neither US side nor the Indian side has shared any details officially. But we guess, looking at the experience of countries who have done the deals with the US recently, this European Union or Japan or Indonesia or Vietnam, we see, there's nothing like early harvest deal. It's like in principle deal and the full negotiated deal with the text. That's what is coming out. For example, with the Europe and Japan, Trump said something. Now Japan is contesting that version. Their cabinet secretary has issued a proper paper where they don't agree, even on bigger things like investments of $550 billion, about the profit sharing, about the tariffs. They say 15% tariffs includes the regular MFN tariffs. Trump doesn't mention this. They say MFN is very different. So countries are saying Trump's announcements, they are one-sided, and basically they are in principle, or you can say in principle negotiations only outcome of that, and they cannot be implemented. So what is happening is that by announcing these in-principle deals, the countries will get rid of these Trump tariffs. Like 20%, 25% we are facing, they will face 15% or 10% or 20%, whatever is decided. They will not face the higher tariffs. But from their side, they don't have anything to concede immediately. So Trump and their teams, they will be negotiating 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, and then it will be finalized, and then it will be implemented, and the real trade will start taking from there. So I think I want to make a distinction. Early harvest, we have been talking about this, but my sense, looking at other deals, is that the deals announced by Trump, they are unimplementable. They are in principle deals, and when they are negotiated, put in paper, then they become the full deal.
I see. And those on paper deals are likely to be quite different from what Mr. Trump has been putting on Truth Social.
You see, any free trade agreement deal, 20 to 24 subjects are there. We see the recent example of India UK trade deal. So all those things are negotiated to the last word, checked legally, and tariff lines. We cannot say 20%. There are 12,000 tariff lines. There are different tariffs on different things. Everything has to be put in past the legal test, and that's how the international trade happens. So Trump will have to do all these things. Without that, it cannot be implemented. It's just in principle announcement, maybe to boost his ego, or because he doesn't have time, he want to show to the world that. So I say I don't want to use the early harvest anymore now. I say in principle agreement, which are unimplementable, but they save countries from higher tariffs, and these negotiated full text agreements. With India, when we were talking about this, the initial impression was that Trump will be asking for tariff cuts here and there. We'll talk about those things, and he's also talking about getting this free flow of data. Rest he will be talking later in September, October. But the way other countries' negotiations have happened, I think this may not happen.
Okay. And now, along with the 25% tariff, he did mention a penalty. So, do we have any idea of what this looks like? Is there any precedent for such a penalty? Would it be in percentage terms? Would it be in an absolute value, these many dollars worth? What kind of penalty?
I'm not sure whether even he is aware of the quantum. Their side may be calculating. So, two things. They have been saying 10% additional penalty for being a BRICS member. And then one of his senators, he was talking about 500% penalties because you are buying oil from Russia. And if you recall, on Brazil, they imposed 50% tariff on two grounds. And the second round was Brazil makes a lot of requests to X, that Twitter, for taking down the content. Now Twitter
Right.
says that they receive max requests from India, mighty, for taking down the content. So Trump may keep on adding. It's not that if we have a deal announced today, we are saved. He may be conjuring new things if he's not happy with you tomorrow, day after tomorrow. He has no respect for any negotiated deal.
Right. And this also is over and above the tariffs he's imposing on steel and aluminum and even the auto related tariffs, right?
It's not over and above. Those are in the parallel universe. Like 50% for steel, they will be implemented across the board, and these tariffs, will not apply to those. There is a canvas. There is a say a bouquet of products, for example, smartphones, steel, aluminum, cars, where either there are no tariffs or there are tariffs, but they will be same for everyone, irrespective of the country-specific tariffs, which will apply on remaining products.
Okay. And now, Suhasini, I wanted to ask you also about he has now directly linked India and Russia, their economic relationship, with now India and US's trade relationship. So, I mean, what implications does this have going forward?
It's hard to tell simply because the past is not a precedent anymore. Mr. Trump, as Mr. Srivastav has quite rightly said, can change his mind depending on how he feels on a certain day. If, for example, Mr. Putin were to agree to a ceasefire on Ukraine, Mr. Trump may actually lift all sanctions on Russia, in which case India would not be an offender there. Even in his first term, if you remember, Mr. Trump signed the CAPSA Act against India, which would affect India to buy S 400 missile systems over there. And we saw that Mr. Trump never actually implemented them, even though India did take delivery of those systems. On the other hand, he threatened India on Iran's oil imports. And at that time, the government decided to buckle and cancelled all oil imports from Iran and Venezuela. That was in 2017. Now we have a similar scenario with Russia, and it remains to be seen whether it's just a threat, whether India will buckle as it did before to that kind of threat, or it will say what Mr. Modi and Mr. Modi's government said to the Biden administration, which is that India has to secure its energy resources. This is a sovereign issue. I think there were a lot of lessons also learned from that decision on Iran and Venezuela. I think the third question is about BRICS, because it seems to be connected, because both Russia and India are in BRICS at present. And remember, India is going to host the BRICS summit next year, and it's planning to do it on a grand level like the G20. So that's another thing for us to think about diplomatically, what this will mean in the next few months. The Quad summit is due to happen in Delhi, possibly in mid-November. Mr. Trump is expected to come for that. And a trade deal was hoped. It was hoped that this trade deal could be wrapped up before that. When it comes to the specifics of what Mr. Trump is going to impose on India, because of course they're saying 10% baseline plus 15%, so 25% tariffs, which is still a little lower than his original figure of 26%.
Of 26, yeah.
And then penalties for this Russia energy import, as well as for BRICS. So we don't know what that penalty is going to be. I presume they have tried all the other ways of sanctioning, because remember, in the last week, the European Union has sanctioned Naira Energy, the first time that has happened in Indian refinery. Has been sanctioned. Yesterday, the US State Department sanctioned 6 Indian companies for importing oil from Iran or using Iranian oil in some way, reprocessing and reselling those as well. So we might see that kind of action to begin with, more sanctions on Indian companies. And then when you see something like Microsoft, for example, pulling out of a deal with Naira because of the sanctions, then you realize there'll be secondary effects as well. So the first thing will be the sanctions. The second will be the secondary effects. The third will be whether there will be a kind of punitive action of a different kind, which will be specific to India. It won't be about just dealings with Russia, but specifically punitive action against India. And those might actually take a little longer, because Mr. Trump has at different times said that he does want to punish them. But remember, this is August and the US Congress is in session, and there's already a bill that Mr. Lindsey Graham is bringing about for 500% tariffs on countries that continue to buy energy from Russia. And he has said very specifically, Brazil, Russia, and Brazil, China, and India are the 3 countries that are being targeted by that bill. He's issued very sort of obnoxious and a sort of harsh statement saying we will crush you with these sanctions. But he seems to have some kind of backing from Mr. Trump, which is why this particular bill has a record number of sponsors in the House of Representatives, not yet in the Congress itself. So those are the 4 things I think Indians need to watch out for when it comes to Mr. Trump's threat specifically on Russia.
Okay, and now, Mr. Srivastava, we have a whole bunch of questions from the audience, and they all, I think you are the best person to answer most of them. So the first has to do with how does the 25% tariff impact the Indian exports of jackfruits? But I mean, I would like you to expand on this, and not just jackfruits, but which are the various sectors that are going to be impacted?
Okay, so I'll start with the example of, say, gent shirts. So tariff, MFN tariff in US is 12%. 12 plus 25 is 37%. Penalty, let's ignore penalty, we don't know the amount. China, 30 plus 12, 42%. So we are better off compared to China. We are better off compared to Bangladesh because they have 34% plus 12%. We are worse off compared to Vietnam because they have to pay only 20%. They already have an FTA with the US, so no MFN tariff of 12%. But if they are buying, say, fabric from China, the tariff may become 40%. That's what Trump has said.
Right.
So it's not very easy to answer. We have to see for each product, we have to see who are the major suppliers, who are the major competitors of India in the US market. So I gave this example of gent shirts. So we answer this question after a few days when the tariff Trump announces on all other countries, major countries are clear to us. This one, but I'll add some examples here which are clear in my mind. For example, there are no tariffs on smartphones. There are no tariffs on pharmaceuticals right now. He's talking about so many things about pharmaceuticals, 200%, but nothing on record right now. Then there are 50% tariffs on steel and aluminum, and 25% tariffs on cars and auto parts. These things. Apart from that, rest of the and petroleum products, there is zero tariffs in the US across the board, whatever is the country specific tariff. So I was calculating that what, about half of our exports to US, they either will be facing the horizontal tariff, which means tariff like steel, which are applicable on everybody else, the same tariff, or they have zero tariffs. So,
I
so
see.
the struggle remains for other half of the products. For example, this we export $2 billion worth of shrimps, prawns to US.
Right.
Now the tariff is around 16%. 16 plus 25 is very high. So they'll prefer buying prawns from Canada. But I may not know whether they have developed a taste for Indian prawns. In that case, whatever price they charge, they will pay for that. So, so, so these are some broad observations. Jackfruit, I'm sorry, I don't know the tariff, so I cannot respond to this.
I see. Uh, but the other question is that if the trade deal happens with the US, this is the bilateral trade agreement that the two countries have been working on. If that happens, how would India compensate the trade deficit with China? As currently we have a trade surplus with the US. So if that trade surplus comes down, then how do we balance out the huge deficit that we have with China?
No, no, no. Two things cannot be balanced.
Okay.
We have to look at the trade deficit at the global level. For
Right.
example, with Russia, we imported oil worth more than $60 billion. Our exports are less than $3 or $4 billion only. Huge deficit, but we are not worried. By importing more from Russia, we are saving more money. So trade deficit, bilateral trade deficit is never an issue. Mr. Trump, I mean, he is just missing on something very basics, that he is punishing countries with bilateral trade deficit. But he is also punishing countries like Australia with whom he has trade surplus. So he just want to punish countries.
Right.
So yeah.
Okay. And so, Hasani, this question is for you. So, President Trump has been quite vocal and unambiguous about what he thinks of India's tariff and non tariff barriers, and also on the decision to buy cheap Russian oil. So, are we right to be surprised by these tariffs that he's now announced?
Sure. And this is also a good question, because the fact is, if we have been taken by surprise by what Mr. Trump has done, that would mean that there's some basic misunderstanding between our negotiating teams and his negotiating teams. There is some mismatch in expectation between the two sides that has not been seen. And one of the things that we have been, of course, reporting at the Hindu as well on is that there is enough, if you like, a backlog of unfulfilled expectations from Mr. Trump's first term that we tend to forget about, because we tend to think that that was in that term. But in that first term, if you remember, and I think you were reporting as well, India and the US had started very serious negotiations for a free trade agreement.
Correct.
When Mr. Modi went to Texas for that Howdy Modi event where Mr. Trump was there, the expectation was that the two sides would have come to an agreement. We also saw when Mr. Trump came to Delhi in 2020, they came very close to a trade agreement. Dial back a little further in 2019 in June, when Mr. Trump decided to withdraw India's GSP status, which was punitive action.
Yeah,
He made
absolutely.
clear he was doing it because that he felt that India was not being fair on tariffs and non-tariff barriers. Now, when the Biden administration came to power, it seemed they were not interested. They, in fact, said very clearly, we're not interested in FTAs. We don't have the strength in Congress because they require ratification in the US Congress. We don't have the strength to put it through. So we're just going to drop it. And India was very happy to drop these negotiations. So the idea that we got a reprieve for 4 years from this kind of sharp razor focus on the FTA didn't mean that Mr. Trump wouldn't pick it up when he came back. He also remembers some of the things that he was particularly upset about. Why did the Harley Davidson issue has gone away now, but there are other things that he consistently talks about. Mr. Srivastava referred to shrimps. Now, the fact is that the US imports about 95 or 90 to 95% of its shrimps from outside the country. And in a state like South Carolina, which he very much hopes to retain, this is a bit of a mainstay. They've been trying to get more of the American market. So some of the things like the apples, the walnuts, the shrimp that he is specifically hung up on, corn, soya, are because there is an American domestic constituency that he's playing to. And I think maybe we have missed that specific items where we think we are talking about a principle, but specific items that the Americans want India to agree to, cutting the tariffs on, are because there is a domestic constituency there. The third is, I think, the market access issue. And India is seen as a very closed economy, a very protected economy. Whether that is required or not is something that I'm sure the experts talk about. But if we start cutting out and saying these things are completely off the table, then where is there going to be any negotiation? So we should have possibly been much more clear when Mr. Modi went to Washington in February and said, I come from a country that has such a huge agrarian population that does depend on dairy as much as it does, that has the sensitivities we have, the phytosanitary barriers, and that sort of thing. We have the sensitivities that we do about various kinds of dairy products and non-vegetarian items. So this is not something we can negotiate on. To have left it to the last, I think there, possibly what the viewer is asking as a question, there we should not then have been surprised that this became the issue that it was.
Right. And Mr. Srivastava, this is a question from me, leading on from what Sehasni was saying about the various concessions that the US wants us to give. We just signed a deal with the UK, and there we provided several concessions. Yes, we kept a few core agriculture sectors out of the deal, but we gave them quite a few things. They gave us quite a few things. But given that, one, the US is a far bigger economy, and two, a much larger trading partner for India, is it likely that a future trade deal will end up giving the US a lot more concessions than we gave to the UK?
We are willing to give US much larger concessions than we have given to anyone. For example, 95% of US exports to India, they're industrial products. We say we will be agreeing to eliminate tariffs on everything. So 95% of your exports to India become tariff-free from day one. There is no problem with that. Our problem is some core agriculture and dairy products. We know the sensitivity attached to them. So our problem is that only, but this guy doesn't want to listen. I'm very surprised how Europe, they have agriculture, they protect their agriculture so fiercely. My friends are there. I was talking to them 3-4 days back. They were saying, no way, there is not going to be a deal. We are talking about cutting the MFN tariffs. You forget about country-specific tariff of 30%. They surrendered in 1 hour, everything. The stories which come out, how they surrendered, we all will come to know after a few weeks. It's an abject surrender. So I'm happy India has not surrendered. And at the same time, to tell to the naysayers, India has agreed to eliminate tariffs on 95% of their exports. 5% is very sacrosanct for us. Agriculture is not a trade issue for us. 700 million farmers. If you see what happened in Africa between 2010 to 14, these US and EU, they could persuade Africa to drop their import tariffs, and they overproduce, over subsidize, and 1 year the prices were half. African farmers could not sell in the domestic market, and so next year they did not produce. Next year international prices they risen, and there was a famine situation in Africa. Many millions of people died in Ghana and Nigeria. We don't want repeat of that, and our population is much bigger than African population, 700 million people.
Right.
And it's not the job issue. I talk to some of my good friends. They say, till how long India should protect its agriculture? Why not improve your productivity? But here, I just want to leave this word. Suppose we improve the productivity. What happens? Out of 70 crore, 69 crore go out of agriculture. 1 crore are able to produce the goods we need. Agriculture. 69 crore, where they are going, there is no place in industry or services. They will die on the street. So we are better off with whatever, wherever we are.
I see. I understand what you're saying, that the other sectors also need to become much bigger to absorb the people who might leave agriculture if we improve our productivity. Right. And okay, so there's one question which I think I can answer. The question is, what will be the impact on our GDP through these tariffs? And here I can quote a study by the Bank of Baroda. In fact, they released it today. They had done an analysis earlier saying that a 26% tariff, which is what Mr. Trump had earlier threatened to impose on India, a 26% tariff would reduce our GDP by 0.2 percentage points. So 0.2 percentage points. So they say that a 25% tariff will do about the same. So basically, if earlier the projection was that we would grow at 6.6% a year, then after these tariffs, if they do come in place, then we'd grow at about 6.4%. So the impact on the macro economy is likely to be minimal. But the issue is that the impact on the microeconomy, several individual sectors, those will feel the pinch a lot more than the overall broad economy will. So now I'm being told that that's all the time we have. First of all, thank you to all the viewers for tuning in, sending all of your questions. They were wonderful questions. They added to the discussion. And thank you to our panelists, Mr. Shivastav and Sohasni. Thank you so much for joining us. And all of you who are watching, thank you so much for watching.
Thank you. Thank you.